Hello and welcome to another Writers Showcase. We're on number 123, an auspicious occasion indeed. Anyway, allow me to bring in my guests. Let me see, where's a good one? There's one somewhere in here. Well, first, let's bring in Lucia. Adjust your mic volume, please, everybody.
Yo, what's up?
And I found a good, appropriate entry for our Mr. Cameraman.
What the frick is that Call of Cthulhu shit?
Hey, how's it going? Alrighty, well, everybody knows the drill at this point. We've done 123 of these things.
Damn.
So, Lucia and then Cameraman first, I think.
All right, if you insist. So, fair warning, today's chapter that I'm presenting is actually about 3,948 words long. I shall, however, not be reading out the full thing. I'll be cutting that in half for everyone's sakes today. So, yeah, I guess a recap is in order for this. Basically, what's been going on over here is that Rosa has been desperately trying to get back home. She does, however, have to jump through a number of hoops, including Officer Academy, but she's also experienced a few incidents with the people of Polis and, of course, other military personnel, many of whom were suspicious of her because of how fast she was progressing through the ranks, and of course she was assaulted at some point. Let's see. In the previous chapter, I read off a segment where she was basically on break for exactly 7 days because she chose to wait 7 days before getting back at it. And I also alluded that today, well, in the next chapter, that she will be meeting someone of high importance, which brings us to today's chapter. The joy had vanished, faded into memory. There was no comfort for Lucia as she and Malik waited in the quiet, dim, frigid lift. With them stood two highly decorated vanguards, the same kind she first saw when landing on Polis. They wore a gunmetal plate, their armor trimmed in navy blue, with shield-shaped rondels next to their left shoulder, and a glowing blue T-shaped visor. One of the two looked at her, sending a shiver down her spine and prompting her to look away. She crossed her arms over her chest, her scarlet shirt fully sealed. Lucia's gaze began to wander and stray back to Malik. She noticed the jittering in his form, his eyes widening, his eyes wide open, and his posture stilted, paralyzed. So she closed in, making sure he saw her first. Psst, hey, she whispered to him, startling him. You good? Malik blinked, as though needing a moment to register what she said. Then he sighed. Don't worry, Wasia. I'm fine. She frowned as her shoulders sank. Yeah, you didn't look fine. A tune rang in the elevator, the floor pressing against Wasia's heels as it stopped. A guard lifted up his PRG, carrying it properly. Come on, this is our stop, he said as the doors opened, taking them down a sparsely decorated silvery corridor with another pair of guards at the far end. Lucia stepped out, following the gunmetal soldiers, hearing the clanking of boots echo down the hallways that branched from the corridor. Her eyes started around, spotting various people in suits and uniform, some accompanied by androids. The ones that saw her shot a sharp look at Lucia. So she focused her attention ahead, her mind still lingering on Malik. Why is he so nervous? She wondered. I get this guy's important and all, but why is he so scared of him? Maybe this guy's his boss? Her brows drew together, and she shook her head. No, there's gotta be more to it than that. Hold it! She stopped, realizing they had reached reached the far end. We'll take it from here, the guard said, tapping the panel. Lucia watched her press the button, feeling the hairs on her neck stick up. Well, looks like we're about to find out. The door split open. A digital rumbling rushed past her, rising and falling like a wave. She and Malik followed the guards inside. A cold draft washed past her, sending a shiver down her spine. The office was vast and expansive, with a segment at the far end raised higher than the rest, and a window behind it that was as wide and tall as the room itself. There was where it resided. Behind a silvery desk, a metallic figure sat upon its throne. It reared its head, bright light shining from its face. Lucia froze in place, goosebumps forming across her bronze skin. Welcome, it said, the blue light flashing as it did. Please, come in. Lucia's hands tensed, but she kept going. Her eyes darted between the H-frames hung on either side of the room, displaying the signing of the Constitution, the Battle of a Drum, the introduction of the VGC, to the raising of the flag over El Khalifa. Sorry. Her eyes started down, seeing she was walking upon a navy blue carpet that led to the desk. On either side of the cyborg was yet another guard and a flagpole, one with a seal of some kind and the other bearing the national flag of the USR. There was also a young woman to his right, one dressed in a white lab coat and with a copper complexion, long white hair, and aqua blue eyes that studied Lucia's every movement. Take a seat, the cyborg said, drawing Lucia's attention to the chair prepared for her, and did just that, locking eyes with the machine. Its hands were folded on the desk, statuesque and unfazed. So, you must be Lucia, it asked with a cold, artificial voice. I apologize for not speaking with you sooner. As you can imagine, I have been rather occupied with a few headaches, the cyborg said, its head panning to Malik with a soft whirl. Lucia traced its gaze to the mortified Malik. She gritted her teeth and glared at the silvery machine. I'm sorry, who are you, and why do you want to see me? The machine blinked. Then it chuckled. Where are my manners? I am Dr. Harun Rashid Abdullah, but you may know me as Chancellor of the United Systems Republic. Lucia's pupils widened, her lungs hollowing as she became paralyzed in place. I see I have your attention, Haroon remarked. The reason you're here is so that I may voice my gratitude. I understand there was a dreadful incident last week that resulted in your hospitalization. Lucia winced. Her nerves. Oh, hold on for a second. I'll be back.
No worries. Ah, family. What can you do? So, how about them Chiefs?
Sorry about that.
No
Somebody
worries.
at the door and I had to answer it. So, anyway, give me a moment. I need to find where I was again. Lucia winced. Her nerves are calling the burning and stinging across her. Yet, Haroon carried on. I feel I must apologize for such an incident. Though she was no longer affiliated with us and was reprimanded with the harshest measures possible. Lucia wrapped her arms around herself, cold and shivering. Thanks, she muttered, and glanced up at the white-haired woman, seeing a somber look on her face. Now, as for the real reason you're here, the Chancellor began. Given that you've returned from your vacation so soon, immediately after the obligatory period has ended, no less, I think it's apparent you're a determined young lady. He tapped the desk, projecting a planet over it. Lucia stared at it, her heart racing. It was home. The warmth rushed back in as the memory of the black-haired woman, her smile, and the image of her writhing in pain on the ground, with the obsidian soldiers not too far away, shooting down hordes of innocents. Their screams echoed in Lucia's head as she came back to reality. As you may or may not know, Haroon continued, getting Lucia to look back at him. We are currently in the middle of negotiations with the Irigus Dominion. We want our home back. And from what I've read, you are very invested in this world. Lucia looked back at the projection, its light reflecting off her retinas. Yeah, more than you know. How would you like to go back there? She blinked and shook her head, not noticing the white-haired woman glaring at Haroon. Lucia squinted, dumbfounded. Excuse me? I've already stated you are a determined young woman. That, and it's clear you were brought here under false pretenses, the cyborg straightened out. I would like to correct that. Lucia's breathing became more visible. She looked back at the projection of her home, piecing together whatever fragments of memory she could. He's just letting me go? Like that? No. No way it can be that easy. She looked back at the silvery cyborg, staring into the glowing visor over his face. Yeah, there's no way he'd let me go just like that. Lucia tugged at her collar, venting the steam building up beneath. Okay, what's the catch? Only that you finish what you started, Haroon answered. The deal remains the same. You will complete your training and provide a final demonstration of your abilities as a commissioned officer. After that, we'll assign you to a lieutenant commanding a small platoon stationed on Earth, which, by the time you do complete your training, will be squarely within our hands. Lucia clenched her fists, feeling her pulse in her temples. And how long will that take? With her current trajectory, you're on course to graduate within 6 months, the fastest of any applicant. Lucia huffed, sweat forming at her brows. Any objections? Her eyes started back to the image of Earth, then back to her rune. Nothing came up, so she shook her head. Good. If you don't mind, I'd like to speak with Malik. Alone, he said, drawing Lucia's attention to Malik once more. The captain still had his head hung, a dull look in his eyes, lifeless. Yet, she rose from her seat, but before she could walk away, Haroon spoke up. You two, provide her escort. He pointed to the guards who escorted her in. Make sure we don't have a repeat of last week. Yes, sir, the two shouted in unison. And with that, Lucia followed the vanguards out of the Chancellor's office. And I'm going to have to stop over there. I won't keep on going, but it seems that we are surprisingly busy for some odd reason.
Weird.
Yeah, it's Ramadan, and every single freaking night we have to go out to some person's house and eat over there. And it's like, it's a bit frustrating, even during the work days when this shit happens. But yeah, go ahead. So let me know what you guys want to think of it. I guess I'll have to mute for a bit.
It was good. I would definitely say that it was a good progress that's being made. I'm impressed by the amount of progress you're making in the story so far. I specifically like the adjustment of the usual what is it? As you know concept, but I did think that it was done well in terms of making sure that you're saying you may or may not know, which was a good use of the usual thing. But anyway, very good. Very good stuff.
Thank you. By any chance, does anybody remember who the white-haired lady is?
No, I don't.
That was Naomi. She was a character from the previous chapters, but don't worry, she's only showed up like twice before, and not for very long, I guess. So, yeah, I wouldn't really expect anybody to remember her, which is kind of a shame. But again, that's neither here nor there. So, any thoughts on the big guy himself? Good old-fashioned Haroon Rashid, one of the newer concepts in the story.
I do like him as a character. He definitely has a good amount of presence. Let me think. I can't really think of much else to say about him, other than he definitely has a lot of charisma, and you write him in a way that does make him seem extremely powerful without being overbearing, which is nice.
Yeah. The main goal that I wanted to go for with his portrayal is you get the feeling that this guy knows what he's talking about, that he's been around for a bit, but you also get the feeling that despite him knowing all this, that he's also holding back something, like he's not telling you something. And the whole vibe I'm going for is kind of like Dr. Samuel Hayden. As a matter of fact, you'll actually notice that there's quite some overt parallels between the two characters.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that's something of a vibe that I'm going for with him. So, Mr. Cameraman, do you have anything you would like to share?
Overall, I think you did. Overall, that was a pretty interesting. That was a pretty interesting passage. I guess. I do have one question though.
Yes, go for it.
Like I might be remembering this wrong, or I may have misheard you, but in one part you said we follow them, or like we follow them out of somewhere.
Huh.
Am I remembering that right? Something about how like I might be misremembering it, but like what kind like yeah, I'm probably misremembering it.
Yeah, because I don't really use first person in the text.
Yeah, I
I
thought I
only
heard. Yeah, I just probably thought I heard a use of first person, so I was gonna wonder if that was a typo, but I'm probably just misremembering.
let's see. I mean, it could be you misheard Wissia because it could sound like a we.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
Well, any thoughts on the main gal herself, or nothing much to commentate on?
Nothing much to commentate on other than that you did a pretty good job.
Okay, nice. So, let's see. Is that everything that you guys wanted to say?
That's all I had.
All right. Well, I do want to apologize for not actually being able to provide more substance today because it kept getting cut off. But, maybe next time. So, yeah. Mr. Cameraman, if you would like to go next.
So I have a few things. So I have one chapter of a story I'm writing. It's a first draft, so bear with me. Or it's an early draft, so.
All right.
You want
fair warning, though, I may end up having to go because I think my little brother has to go to a birthday party today, and apparently I'm hearing about this just now. So, yeah, if I disappear, that's probably why.
Okay. So this is the story. Do you want context for the chapter, or should I just go straight into it?
Context would be nice.
So this is for a story that's currently on hold, but I got a chapter done. So the premise here is so this is first person narration, and the idea here, so the narrator is basically a servant in this was basically taken in by this king, and now she's trying to leave the castle and sort of leave her life as a servant. That's pretty much all the context I think you'll need. And also another thing is that this is set underwater, and these characters are merfolk. So just so you can visualize what the characters look like. You guys understand?
Yep, that's good.
Okay, so here's chapter 1. I'll probably stop if I'm going on for too long, so here it is. I don't know why I tried to escape that night. I couldn't remember the last time I saw the city or even stepped outside the palace. Still, I was smart enough to understand how dangerous Exodon was. The only thing I ever knew about my mother was that she died. Even for King Marduk, that's just bad parenting. I knew Marduk would punish or even kill me, but still, I had to try. I was a prisoner all my life, but I didn't want to let him control me anymore. I just wanted to avoid him, which is why, in the shadows of the night, I successfully snuck out of his castle. home of the royal family. I had no idea how I would survive in a city like Exodon, but honestly, dying out there would be preferable to a life in that palace. Luckily, I had someone willing to help me escape. As I glided through the oceanic passages of the castle, I made sure not to touch the ground at all. I guess living underwater does have some perks. Suddenly, I came across my first stopping point before leaving, the bedroom of Anweer. Despite not being related to the royal family, he was a valuable enough asset for the king to keep him alone, as he had talents far beyond mere prowess for combat. After knocking on the door exactly 6 times, the door slowly began to creak open before revealing his pale face. "Cordelia? What are you doing here? I thought the plan was supposed to begin tomorrow." And Weir whispered with a hushed tone and a gravelly cadence. Not wanting to waste time, I quickly responded. "Look, I think Marduk might be closing in on our plans, so I decided to begin a little earlier. A little earlier. I've barely been able to gather together enough tin for you to leave the city. How can you even think of leaving this place? There's no time. There's no other time to do this. I'll just have to grab some tin when I leave. If you just waited for the plan to commence, I could have gotten more tin." Anweer couldn't believe that I spurred this on him at a time like this. "Anweer, listen to me. I promise I'll be fine in the city. You've got to be joking, right? I can't believe you'd even consider this. You're still just a kid, and you need to be. And you're still just a kid. You've got to be patient about this kind of stuff. Look, I know you're worried, but this needs to happen now. I'm not a kid anymore, and you don't have to act like my father. I can do this." Anweer stood motionless and contemplated my actions. He was visibly unsure of what to say for a while. "So, you're positive you want to do this?" "Yeah, positive." Being imbued with a supernatural lineage, he didn't show any sign of aging, not unlike Marduk or his family. I could see a stray tear slide down his albino cheek, only for it to quickly merge with the surrounding ocean immediately. Suddenly he moved forward and pulled me into a hug, quietly sobbing. "Just don't get hurt. I need you to escape this place." "I will." After finishing our goodbyes, he handed me an outfit that resembled the uniform of the Exodon Guard, made up of a crimson cloak and a squid mask. He also cast an illusion spell over me to mask my facial features. After I put on the uniform, I continued traversing the labyrinthian hallways of the castle. Soon I found myself in the dining room, which I hadn't even seen before. But I guess it's just a side effect of eating food from the basement. Notably, I bore witness to several wall carvings detailing the bloodline war carried out by the first king and the original ruler of this family. Suddenly, a voice yelled out from behind me, causing me to stop instantly. "Hey, what are you doing here?" I turned around to see none other than Norguna Frost, Marduk's oldest son, the heir to the throne, and to my great regret, the closest thing I ever had to a brother. In contrast to the colorless visage of Anweer, Norguna would almost look normal if it weren't for the massive scars across his face, obviously a side effect of his frostbite lineage. Nervously, I attempted to greet him casually. Hello, Your Highness. I was just inspecting the area before heading out with the troops. I hope you don't mind." He raised his eyebrow, almost signaling that he caught on to my plan. Cautiously, I reached inside my cloak, where a hidden dagger was being kept just for safety. Ever since I was a girl, I'd always wanted to kill Norgun. I'm not a particularly violent woman, but whenever he whined about his daddy or whined about not being king, he just looked so killable to me. However, his eyebrow lowered, and instead he rolled his eyes at me. Seriously, I thought I made it clear that all guards were assigned to patrol the city. "My apologies, Your Highness." Even referring to him by that title felt sickening to me. "Whatever. Just finish up here and go join the rest. Got it?" "Yes, sir." I made sure to respond with a salute to fully confirm my loyalty to the prince. It's truly a tragedy that pathetic excuse of a man that had all that power, all because his daddy was the king. For a while at least, Marduk gave him whatever his spoiled heart wanted. Trust me when I say he proved himself to be one of the rudest, most unbelievably ill-mannered people I had the misfortune of knowing. In his adolescence, he would complain to the king about wanting control over political affairs, so Marduk eventually threw him a bone by making him head of the town guard. Next thing you know, it was finally time for me to leave this dreaded castle. I moved in among the rest of the Exodon guard, marching with them through the city as they inspected townsfolk for potentially dangerous materials, especially narcotics. As soon as we got far enough from the castle, I split off from the other soldiers without them noticing and began exploring Exodon. As I said before, this was my first time truly seeing everything, and my first reaction was honestly one of disappointment. I was not surprised by the endless alleyways filtering slums and ramshackle houses, as the war with Latium damaged much of the city. What I was most disgusted by was a sign I found near one of the taverns. Unweir's Paradise. Greetings, travelers. Do you feel unfulfilled or unhappy? Tired of living a life where nothing matters? Well, that can all change with one trip to Exodon. Visit our pristine capital and build a brand new life from the ground up. You won't need any prior experience, as you'll receive training from the servants of our glorious leader. Whether it be as a bard, a tavern keep, or even a member of the town guard, I trust you'll find your place in Exodon. Unweir's propaganda in action. Technically, I lived here for several years, and during that time, I was never able to find my place. I never had a proper family. I only had one true friend. And unfortunately, I would end up losing him twice. At the time, I wasn't even aware that such a thing was possible. It's such a fascinating world. Just like what Unweir said, I didn't initially know how I would successfully gain enough money to leave this city, but over the ensuing years, that became the least of my problems. Even if I could escape this city, I would still have to face whatever challenges would cross my path. Writing these anecdotes at my bedside, I can feel the darkness of my life creeping onto the pages. However, I won't be around for very long. I've been left bedridden and almost completely blind, with Aurora helping me with most of my work. My children and grandchildren deserve something they can remember me by. I want my family to understand the struggles and reflect on them in an hour of need. Or perhaps other half-breeds can find inspiration and maybe even a strength if my work comes to the public eye. Maybe Unweir will read this story aloud at one of his many festivals. Only time will tell if this story is preserved or destroyed. I don't care if this story reaches no one except Aurora. It's been in my head for over 60 years, and only now do I have the opportunity to tell my story. Because of this, I want to take the time before continuing to thank Aurora, the brightest star in my life and one of the only reminders I have of my best friend. So that's the end of the chapter.
Oh, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Elric of Melniboné in a lot of ways.
What? How so?
Kind of just the setup, a lot of the verbiage, the style is very reminiscent of Elric.
I've sort of been told somewhat that a lot of my writing style is reminiscent of pulp writers.
Well, I was thinking just Michael Moorcock in specific, since I listened to a little bit of it. I haven't listened to all of it though.
Yeah, so is that a compliment, I guess, that it's reminiscent of?
I would definitely say so. A lot of the I like this style, and I also like the way that you present the information. I also like how you write the characters. I think you did a good job with them. Let me see. I like the intriguing, unique world that you've created for sure. It's definitely a interesting shift. Most people don't usually write stuff in this fashion. Mostly it's medieval fantasy. They don't do merfolk, but it's definitely an interesting contrast for sure.
I'm mostly inspired by a lot of Greek and Roman era stuff, and rather than traditional medieval fantasy,
Okay, I
which
get
is
that.
a few of my stories are derived from that. So yeah, thanks.
Alrighty. So, alrighty. It looks as though I'm up. So, just a summary of what's happened so far. Basically, what has happened is that now that the Empire has been subjected to a coup and the prince has been banished, it's now just the prince and his family that are out in the middle of the ocean with Shimlith after finding a let's see, what was it? After being blown away by a terrible storm, the only weird thing is that the strange pale maiden who seems to be running most of the interactions, or rather is pushing events in a certain direction, has led the prince's daughter to a place where it seems as though she'll be able to get great power, but it will take a long time for her to be ready. And while that's waiting, the plot still goes on where this lady named Irissa is now preparing to try and take over the Empire, and, or at the very least, dreadfully weaken it because of these visions she's been receiving. And that's where we're going to pick up next. All right. Chapter 16, The Flight of Elves, The Sight of Elves. Irissa ran through the burning forest trying to find her people. Everywhere she looked, the forest burned. High above her, dragons blasted the woods, turning it into a conflagration that no one could escape. Screaming, she fell to the ground as a large black shape incinerated her. Sweating, her one eye opened, the other a frozen orb, remaining sightless and still. Sensitively, she reached up to Isiphan and let her lean on her dragon's mental strength. The large purple and silver dragon was sleeping on the balcony of her forest sanctuary, the high tree house, one of dozens. It had taken years to build this place, but it would have taken longer if the orcs had not maintained certain defenses. One day we will rebuild the Liarnia. Aemond and Vagar should not have destroyed it to save the orcs that usurped these woods. Irissa grimaced. She might be descended from Aemond, but many of the things he had done had served to rob her and her ancestors of her birthright. She hated him for that. Megara was worse, though, taking the throne that should have been passed down through Alisane's blood. Then Odin Whitehand had broken the elves after they had lied with Mariel and Aegor's. It had been difficult to build the elves to the point where they were an army, but she had done it. Closing her eyes, Irissa carefully controlled her breathing and rolled out of bed, then sat down on the ground. There had been other dreams and visions other than the burning forest. A different set every night, but that one was always there, and it came last as if to sear the purpose of her war or in her mind. As if I needed more reasons, she grimaced, remembering the sight of Ares and Tantalus' broken bodies on the battlefield. Hera had left them on the battlefield for the crows to pick over. not even bothering to give Arissa's brother a proper funeral, pulling her mind back to what was important. And Arissa flicked through her visions. One in particular stood out to her. A line of ships going up what looked like a man-made river, moving large numbers of troops toward the north, dragons flying high above the ships. She could see the troops moving into the woods after the dragons had burned the elves out, humans chopping down trees and building their fortresses on the ashes of the elves. The canal. Eris's eyes flicked open. I need to destroy it, or at the very least delay it, and drive up the cost of the endeavor. Face stiff, she walked out onto the balcony and climbed onto Sisfen's back. At a mental nudge, the dragon shook himself and spread his wings, scales grating against each other as he flung himself into the sky. Shard watched as the miners started placing large bags of blasting fire in the holes that they'd dug in the previous few hours. Adjusting his gloves, Shard nodded to Master Wickley, who waved a large flag to indicate they needed to light the fuses, as they were called, and then clear the area as fast as if a dragon were after them. Resting his hand on his sword, Shard let Arini take his free hand. She didn't slide his glove off, which he appreciated. They planned the wedding for the week after this groundbreaking ceremony, as the men were calling it. Shard had to admit he was somewhat apprehensive, not because he wasn't going to be able to perform, that he had no question about, more because he did not want to repeat what had happened in the inn. My plan will have to wait until my standing is fully secure, he thought, absently squeezing Arini's hand, and in a specific pattern that would allow him to think while assuring her that he was paying attention to her. And Chimera's reign is rendered sufficiently precarious. What needs to happen is a slow decay. This is going to accelerate our endeavor by several years at least, Arini said quickly, nodding toward the sappers. Thankfully, they hadn't done much work with digging, so using the blasting fire to start clearing the canal before using the mammocks and their enormous plow to get all the earth out of the way was not a terribly hard adjustment. So, how's it going to work? Arini clutched his arm. Are we eager? Is it like dragon fire? Cover your ears. Chart said calmly, suiting words to actions. We're a safe distance away, but the sound is loud. All right. Arini put her hands over her ears. Right as Arini covered her ears, the fuses reached the holes in the ground, as if the earth had abruptly become volcanic. The ground rent itself apart. Fire had flung gouts of rock and fire in a terrible explosion, leaving massive gashes in the earth. The sound and shock wave that came from the explosion felt like a physical blow to both his chest and his ears. Arini stumbled, eyes going wide with shock and amazement. Incredible, she whispered, slowly removing her hands from her ears. You were right, Shard. This will change the world. Get the mammocks and the earth plow ready. Shard motioned to another flag bearer who waved toward the mammoth handlers, who brought their massive beasts forward. It was an impressive sight, to say the least. The huge creatures were harnessed together by massive chains into an enormous plow-like construction designed to pull the earth forward out of the sides of the canal. So good to see all my dreams of building this thing coming true. Arini stroked his arm. After all these years of planning, and now we can finally accomplish this marvel. Arissa watched the progress of this grand canal, as they were calling it, through the eyes of a large eagle. The sight of this new project filled her with horror and amazement. The thing that horrified her was this blasting fire they were using to rend the earth apart with hideous efficiency. What amazed her was just how fast they were going, how smooth the mammoth contract and made the work of and digging deeper in the earth. She directed the eagle to fly around the camp, desperate to see who was responsible for this. The eagle flew lower, its eyes picking all over all the operation. It was an engineering feat, she had to admit. Hundreds of people and resources were being brought to bear on this task. Workmen from all over the kingdom had been brought to labor on this great task, smoothing out the rough canal and then putting the canal locks in place. I'll need to destroy them quickly, Arissa thought, as the man with the blasting powder started digging holes in the ground and for their destructive substance. That stuff must not be allowed to continue either, she thought, as the earth was ripped apart by fire and powder. The destruction that could be wrought by such a terrible weapon would be incalculable. And she was the only one who could stop it. The storm remained encircling the island for weeks, the Tempest forming a ring of rain and tossing waves, but it never closed in on the shores. Bale sat on the beach, Judgment's blade driven into the sand beside him, the silvery blade gleaming in the moonlight that shone from the circle of clear sky above the island. Breathing in, he rested his arms on his knees, watching the mesmerizing contrast between the calm water surrounding the bay and the shore, and the violent storm that raged a few feet beyond the breakers. So, what are you thinking about? Bale turned to see Amelisa walk over him and sit next to him, her fine dress replaced by sailor's trousers and billowy shirt. She had her silver hair pulled back in a braid, and her feet were bare. Odd to notice these things in a time like this. That, Bale pointed at the storm, this whole situation. Yeah, Amelisa started absently kneading the sand with her bare feet. I've been through a number of storms, and at sea, but nothing like this. She tilted her head, then leaned back on her palms, looking out over the hot horizon. We're marooned here by some unnatural force. Force, it seems. Bale ran its hand over Judgment's crossguard before wrapping its hands around the hilt. At least we have a means of taking care of our people. He pulled the sword free and rested on his knees. We have food, shelter, good company. Amelisa nudged him with her shoulder. So have you given any thought to Shali's proposal? Bale blew out his cheeks and looked up at the storm. I have. He rested Judgment's tip on the sand in front of him, the long blade extending several feet beyond his feet. I'm willing to go ahead with it. You don't have to, Amelisa said mildly. We can wait. No, I think we need something normal to make it seem like we're home here. Bale raised the enormous sword to his eyes, the shimmering blade as perfect as the day it was forged. It might be years, but someday we will go home. So, you're willing to add me to your family? She stroked his shoulder as he picked up his scabbard and slid Judgment into her sheath. Yes, I am, Bale nodded. You're a good woman, Amelisa, and I am happy to add you to my family as my wife. Where were you at? Google asked as Persephone landed Cerberus in the underground town. I was scouting for farming areas, Persephone explained, sliding off her dragon's back and giving the orc woman a hug around the waist. Ghoul seemed slightly perplexed initially, but she dutifully patted Persephone on the back. What was that for? She asked. Just wanted to thank you for all you've helped me with, Persephone explained, holding the creature tightly. I don't have my mom or dad with me, so I'm going to need you to be my mom. The ghoul took a deep breath, then bent down and wrapped Persephone up in her large arms. I'm here, child, she said quietly. No matter what happens, I'm here. I'm so scared, Persephone whispered, letting some of her bottled feelings out. I don't know if my parents are all right. I don't know if we're going to be able to win. But the worst part is, I don't know how to be a leader. I'll teach you, little one. Google stroked Persephone's silver hair. I will not be an easy taskmistress, but I will teach you all I know. Thank you. Persephone buried her head in the orc woman's shoulder. And that's the end.
That was nice.
Thank you.
I really like how detailed everything is and how everything is described and how like this story really does feel pretty fleshed out.
Thank you.
I'm also interested, I guess, in seeing more what happens next in this world and with these characters.
Thank you. That's good. Yeah, this one was a relatively short one, but we're only about 60 pages from the end, so I'm really excited for what's going to happen soon.
Cool.
All right. Well, that was a short one. I think we'll conclude it there. This week, I'm not sure what we're going to do. We might be responding to a Wheel of Time defense video. We'll have to see.
That's going to be fun to see someone try to defend Wheel of Time.
Yeah. There are morons who have done it, and we will see. Could be that we'll be watching more of the Count of Monte Cristo anime, and possibly
there's a Count of Monte Cristo anime?
Yep, it was a short one, but it exists. It's only about 24 episodes. Really short. But I think that we will call it good for today. Thank you all for coming. Bye.
Bye.
Enough! Kill me! Just end it. No.